They not like us. They not like us. They not like us.
Welcome back to Real Dads, Real Talk. This is going to be a great episode. I have a great community activist here with us today. I met this fine, I would say, father, brother, community service member, Mr. Keenon James. I met him last week, just randomly sitting at Hell's Kitchen. If you haven't been there, recommend it in the National Harbor. Me and Priya were celebrating 2 years of marriage. We finally made it into Hell's Kitchen, and I peeked over to my left. He was drinking this awesome old fashioned. It came in like this glass chamber, all smoked out, decked out. But I had noticed something more kind of like prominent to me, something powerful was him and his wife were just in this deep dialogue, talking, smiling, and there wasn't a phone in sight. Like, so I was like, hold on. Like, I know the phone's got to be somewhere, and not a phone. And I just, peeped over to him, was like, shout out to you, sir. Shout out to you. As me and my wife were kind of, making sure we take, taking the pictures, making sure that we were able to kind of share our experience with the world. But I just peeked over and I was just like, man, that was a powerful thing to see. And one thing just kind of led to another. And then we just realized how small the community is. So without further ado, sir, just go ahead and kind of give everybody a little bit of who you are.
Not a problem. Keenon James is introduced, native Prince George's County, born and raised. It's where I call home, the DMV, love it. Graduate North Carolina Central University.
I see that.
Very proud of my Eagles.
Go Bears.
We'll allow a little MEAC love. Definitely, like I said, son, which I think is probably the first role given to me in life.
Okay.
I was son of Benjamin and Fonda James, and then brother, and certainly now husband and father, uncle, community advocate, just working to just make sure I leave a legacy. I always say making that dash when we think about our lifespan. Well, what does that dash mean? And that's what I always focus on, making sure I give meaning to that dash. And so just do a lot of things.
Right. One of the things that I kind of loved when I was kind of admiring what I was seeing was the true connection and love that I was seeing between you and your wife. How long have you guys been married?
So been married about 19 and a half years now.
Shout out.
Yeah, so that has been a journey, certainly a growth journey, even as you were saying, to get to the place where the phone isn't there, right? To put it away and to make that conscious decision to know I got to have a conversation with my wife.
Right.
And I've got to be connected. I think that was one of the things that for me, we kind of lost when we started having kids. We started making it about the kids. Our conversation revolved around the kids, but we were on a date night. So we didn't need to talk about the kids or work. It had to be focused on each other. And literally we were planning our weekend and what we were going to be doing. So that's when we were having a conversation about us. And that's something that's important.
Yeah, never stop dating. You told me that.
Yeah.
You said continue to date, make sure that we take the time. Me and my wife are relatively new within our marriage. And we would always be out before our 2 under 2, so before Myra and Mara. We have an 11-year-old as well, but when she went through kind of the postpartum piece, she kind of lost a little bit of herself. I felt like I lost a little bit of her. But at the end of the day, we focused so much on the kids that we kind of forgot, like, hey, like you were here before, the kid. And so that was a very difficult thing for us because, one, being an active duty service member at the office 24/7, then I brought work home. She's been home all day, and we went straight into mom and dad mode, and we were forgetting to, keep it fresh. I mean, we were still great, loving, thriving, doing all that the island, because we were in Hawaii, had to offer, but we wasn't going that extra step to continue to date, and you could feel that aspect missing.
I definitely understand, and I even liken it to my own relationship with my kids. I purposely make it our summers to be tourist in town.
Okay.
Like we live here in DC, and we will walk past the White House, we walk past the monument, the museums. You're like, that's touristy stuff. But sometimes you got to take care and take the moment to appreciate home. And that's the same thing it is, marriage. I've been down that road. It is difficult. we have 3 girls. And
Girl dad all the way.
Girl dad all the way. And my gift was my oldest. She was 8 when my wife and I got married. So, I jumped right into husband and dad mode all at the same time. And, I Googled a way to try to figure out what I was supposed to do, but, you have to learn those lessons, right? I literally had to learn how to be a husband. I'm learning to be a dad. I'm trying to navigate where's my boundaries as a dad, because my oldest has a father. I don't need to replace this man. I am a supplement. How do you navigate that relationship as you go along as well? Those are a lot of things. And for me, honestly, I was 23.
Right.
I was still trying to figure out how to go grocery shopping. And I'm navigating these parts of life too. So, everything and every day is a change.
Right.
I've had to learn that lesson because I was very adamant that I'm not changing, but every day I change.
Right. So another similarity here that I just learned. So your oldest already had dad. I appreciate you giving that. So Priya, same way. Priya, came in understanding that my son was with me pretty much 24/7. I think when Priya came around, Major 11 now, so he's 7, so he's still small boy.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, I kind of sat back. So I'm gonna ask you how you kind of fell into that role, because I felt like I almost pressured my wife into, doing all of those lovey-dovey, things. It's besides allowing her to navigate those paths herself, right? And because I was just like, hey, Major need to be tucked in, or Major got to do this. And it was just kind of like, damn, just let her, it'll come. And so, I learned that, was one, respect those boundaries, right? And that's something that I failed at with her, even though they had their own unique relationship, even before she moved in with me. They had this very good joking on FaceTime, games that they would play and things that they would do. But for me, I was just like, no, make sure you, and it was kind of like, man, take a step back, dude. She got it. So for you, like, how did you navigate those initial waters when it was your time?
I said it jokingly, but it was true. I literally Googled what I needed to do, right? Because I was like, okay, how do I build this relationship? With a little girl, I'm trying to figure out how do I create these boundaries. And from reading all these articles and takeaways, it was create your own lane. Don't try to drive in someone else's. Got it, no problem. Create my own lane. So what was unique for me was, okay, I do like to go out to the museums. My wife is like, it's a museum. But we learned to go out and we did our own thing. And it was never a kind of a feeling like I was trying to be in a space, but we always had our own space. And that space eventually it just merged.
Right.
It just merged and it happened over time.
Right. And same thing with Major. They have this, I'm almost like an outsider at times.
Yeah.
They got their own little, code words and call signs that they be talking. And, I come home, Major runs to his room, playing the video game. And then I leave, next thing you know, Major's in my bed, playing around with Priya and the kids. And then, I'm back and he's just like, oh, Dad's back, back to the video games. And they have that unique relationship. And it's a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah.
So, for those listening, I'd say, learn from Mr. James and, navigating, creating your own space.
Yeah.
But 3 girls.
Yeah.
So what does being a girl dad kind of mean to you?
Oh,
personally?
It has taught me a lot about me, right? Because I have 3 girls with 3 very different personalities.
Okay.
And then they have 3 very different needs. And when I say that, I have one daughter who's more the touch person, right? And I'm not this big hugger kind of person, right? But this daughter needs hugs. And I'm like, golly, I gotta figure this out. Like, I gotta give you hugs, right? I got one that's like, don't bother me. I'm like, that's my girl right there. Like, give me my space, right? So I've had to learn that my girls need something different. And I talk to friends that have boys and they're focused on a lot of things, but they aren't as in tune with what does your son need? It's like, well, he plays this. That's different. It's kind of like the question of how are you doing? And somebody respond, well, man, I'm busy at work. That's what are you doing? That's not how are you doing? And with my girls, I've learned that I have to be in tune with them. And it helps me be in tune with me because I'm listening now to what does my head and heart need. I think before that, I was just all about what does my head need, just processing it. So being a girl dad is tough. totally softened me.
Right. So I think a lot of men, I know I did, right? I didn't grow up with affection and intimacy. I didn't grow up in that environment.
No.
And so it was highlighted, you know, my previous relationship, previous relationship, was highlighted in this marriage.
Right.
Like, hey, you know, you come home and you Captain Man, you know, you go straight into task. But sometimes, you know, you just gotta, it's okay to be in tune with your emotional side.
Right.
I would say more so now that I have a daughter, my second, man, I'm a softie when it comes to her. You know, like I initially was the disciplined parent, where Priya would kind of, you know, hold her and carry her around 24/7. But I was still tough love, you know. But over time, man, just like you said, they soften you up.
Yeah.
In so ways that, you know, I don't like when she trip over her own feet. I'm going to go pick her up.
Right.
You know, kiss boo boos and all that type stuff. And I give my own self a pat on the back.
Yeah.
Because I didn't grow up like that.
Yes.
And I pride myself that, man, you are not doing what was done to you, which was the hardest thing that I think I would ever have to do, which is not subconsciously do things that, you know, was done to me by my parents and things and so on and so forth. Yeah. So, Mr. James, how has all daughters kind of impacted your view on fatherhood?
You know, it's hard for me to compare because I don't have any boys, right? So I only know being a girl dad. I only know dance and cheering and gymnastics, right? Our oldest played basketball, but it was different. You know, it's impacted me definitely as I think about, well, what does she need in life, right? And that's even as I think future forward, you know, when we think about politics and all those, like, what does she need? Because I know what I think I need, but I've got to sometimes recalibrate and say, okay, what does my daughter need? What is she going to need? So I think as I go into fatherhood, I'm trying to always figure out what does she need so that she's ready to be a woman in the world. Right. And what examples do I need to set for her to be a woman in the world? And that's where I think it impacts me the most.
Right. Did you have that, of course, as a male? Did you have that? I wanted a son.
People always say that to me, like, "Oh, are you going to try for a boy?" I would say, "Well, you ain't been asleep at the wheel. I've been trying. It's not like I didn't want, but you know, it's a different plan for me, right? So I have totally embraced it, and I think that for me, I had a great father, and my dad did some great things, and was a great role model for me. That I can take some of those things you were saying earlier, you know, doing different experiences, but there are things that I take from my childhood. I say, I've got to replicate. Okay. And I take those things and I replicate those things and not focus so much on what didn't work. And sometimes we even have that conversation at home where there are things where, man, my childhood had this and I hated this. Well, there are things that I didn't like, but there were a lot of great things. Right. And I try to make sure I insert those as well. So I think about that now. So those are things that my dad helped instill in me, my mom helped instill in me. I hope to instill that in my girls so that they take that into their relationships moving forward. So, I mean, let's dig a little bit deeper. Mm-hmm. What are some of those morals, values, and beliefs that you want to instill in your daughter? You know, I think a true work ethic. I think I walked away from that with my dad. He was someone that had a work ethic. And I would see him constantly get up and go. I mean, I remember that. My dad got up and went to work. And I thought about that consciously is like, what are my girls going to think about me when they grow up? Mm-hmm. Are they only going to remember growing up that my dad got up and went to work? And that's what I absolutely don't want them to remember me as. So I take that, and it's why I do so many other things, right? Mm-hmm. Run marathons. So my girls have seen me out training, and they know, well, my dad runs marathon, my dad does this, I want them to see a whole person so that they also replicate that in their life, that they are a whole person. They're not defined by one thing. Right. And I think for me, when I look back on life, I adore my parents, but I define them by like one thing. Okay. And I want to make sure that my girls can define both my wife and I by more than just one thing. And it's definitely, so I want to give them that work ethic, but I want them to also dream big, and then to work to realize that, to understand, hey, I can do these things, but it takes this. And I think that my parents gave me that too, to say, hey, work towards whatever you want to achieve. And that's something that I want them to do. Definitely Christian values that we instill. Definitely wanted them to have those values. I understand that, to have that great base and grounding, because there'll be times when you can't figure it out, and the only thing you can do is just have some silent time.
Right.
And so unless you have that good base, you don't even know what to listen for in that silent time. So that's another one of those things where I think it's important for me to instill in them is that base.
Right. So, I mean, we talked about replicating, and my dad did some good things, did a lot of bad things, right? But just like you said, we got to take, I think for me, I think all parents, they did the best that they knew how. I think I've said this maybe, you guys out there listening, I think every episode I've said they've done the best that they knew how to do with the knowledge that they had at that time. My dad was homeless at 14 years old. He grew up rough, right? So for him, his first was a daughter, my sister Samia, and then all boys. And then it was just like, I ain't raising no punks.
Right.
So he was straight, full metal every day. But just like your dad, my dad was gone first thing in the morning. And I didn't see him until practice time, and even then he showed up in full uniform, coaching Laurel Boys and Girls Club, making sure walking over to my practice. That's how I got the name Manning, because my dad showed up in uniform. I was like, oh, that's Coach Manning's son. And so that was one of the things that I saw him, regardless of a lot of the things I saw, was he's going to make sure that he provided for the family. And that is what, for me, is just like you, I have to instill in my children. Even my daughter, you got to work and go get it. Like that princess and that queen stuff, down the road, right? I want you to be equipped to be able to go and get whatever you desire in this world and not have to wait on nobody else to be able to give it for you. What are some of the challenges that you have faced, as a 3-time girl dad, that you would, wish you could do over or, change? Sustain?
I think I wish that I had learned sooner a word that you just used, which was provider. I think that's what I focused on a lot early in marriage and in parenting, that I needed to be a provider. And I've learned, believe it or not, that's probably the easiest thing for me to do is be a provider, because that's what instinctively comes to me. I'm going to have a work ethic. Because I'm going to take care of me. So y'all gonna get taken care of. But those other things, like I said, learning, this one needs this. This is what motivates her. Because telling you to do schoolwork isn't gonna motivate everyone, right? Some of them need I need you to sit down with me and kind of go through it. I got another daughter that she'll go and she'll do it. Doesn't need anybody to, but you can give her the reassurance after you've gone through it. I think for me, if I had learned sooner to parent different, not just be a parent, I have to take each personality and kind of work with it. I think that could have been a little easier both for my girls, but also just for me and my wife. Like, we got to be on the page understanding this one needs this one needs that. So we aren't arguing about trivial stuff. Right.
Did y'all face any major challenges within the marriage itself because of the way you guys were parenting?
Yeah, I think that we were both trying to do the same thing, but just coming from different directions, right? And we weren't communicating that very well. That's really what it boiled down to. Both of us wanted good things for the girls. I think about going through college applications, of course, but it's like, well, what does she want, right? There are lots of different things. We had one that was playing gymnastics, and she's phenomenal. Like, stick with it, And I'm like, her heart doesn't seem like it's in it. I'm also saying, man, and I'm also thinking, man, I didn't pay money for all of this stuff. You better keep going, right? But I was thinking about it in the sense of, you're good, stay with it. But her heart wasn't in it. And when your heart's not in it, your performance isn't going to show up.
100%.
Right?
100%.
And so it's learning those different things and being in tune. Because I think now I can say, oh man, if I was paying attention, I saw when she didn't perform her best. And that's where it was starting to slip.
Right. I took away 3 kind of critical components that you discussed. One was versatility, and being adaptable, of changing the roles that you're in. From adjusting from, husband. I'm gonna give my wife this type of love. This is what she likes, a little bit more affection. Then you go to daughter 1, and it's like, okay, still in the affection, likes a little bit more hugs. Okay, daughter 2, got to flip the switch.
Right.
This one is like stiff arm Heisman you, and then daughter 3, you know, so on and so forth. And I think that that's what my biggest lesson learned was when Amira came was, you compare Major this whole one way, it might not resonate with mine. You know, Major was dress right dress.
Right.
He was going to parade rest when he was like 2 years old.
Right.
He knew. Amira, you know, I'll be like, you know, I'm gonna give you 5 seconds to get off. I'm like 1, 2, and she'd be like 3, 4. And she go, excuse me?
Right.
You know what I mean? She gonna tempt me. She's gonna test me.
Yeah.
So I had to build some patience up when it came to her.
Yeah.
And then now with Maverick, it's kind of like he's super chill. I'm like, and like you said, now I'm like, that's my guy right there.
Right.
He's laid back, chilling. He ain't really doing much. When he wants his bottle, he gonna let mommy know I'm ready for bottle. Come. It's time. So that versatility and that adaptability. The second component was your ability to kind of switch gears almost when it came down to your upbringing to your kids' upbringing. And you talked about when their passion is in it. And I think that is something that a lot of people got to take away. Because a lot of parents be like, oh, I got to make sure that you don't miss out on opportunities that I missed out on. Yeah. And they subconsciously or consciously try to live their lives through their kids. Yeah. And they're like, you know, forcing them to kind of do, you know, said things. And, you know, that was something that I wanted to make sure I did not do. So when it came down to like sports, I let Major kind of, you know, pick and choose wherever he wanted to go. Because I saw it in football, though he thrived and excelled, you know, it was like some days he would just show up and like, I ain't with it. You know, and for me, like you say, I spent my money. You going to practice today.
Right.
Like there's no questions asked, you know. But I more so, and it was difficult because then you look back on parenthood, I'd be like, why is my dad kind of forcing me to do this? It wasn't necessarily he was forcing me, he was trying to teach me about discipline. He was using certain things that's like, I'm not living my life through you, but I gotta put you through certain things in order for you to understand about what life is. And sometimes we look at things on face front as kids because you don't really see the bigger picture, the holistic picture. And I think that's what my pops was trying to do was like, I'm trying to shape you. You know, going to practice, that's being, you know, deliberate. You know, that's building discipline. It's building hunger. It's teaching you how to overcome. It's teaching you resiliency. It's teaching you all those aspects. And so I just appreciate you being able to navigate those. And then the last component that you really hit on was communicating. And communicating up and out and down and in. So making sure that you and your wife are on the same page. Me and Priya found ourselves on a very different page some days. Because we saw the end state and the goal the same. Yeah. But our ways and means to get to that goal was very different. And it took, you know, some outside entities to help us be able to navigate those waters. This discussion is helping me right now to be able to navigate waters and say, you guys want the same. Your ways of getting there is different. And the way she was brought up has shaped her perspectives on the way to parent. You know, the way I was brought up is shaping my perspectives, and neither one was perfect, neither one was the exact way, but we have the ability now. And then once we started to be able to communicate, okay, if we even got to create a plan of action and we just talk about it at night, and that helped with communication, and we started to create these plans. And so I just, you know, appreciate, you know, all those big 3 components that you discussed. You also mentioned you do a lot kind of in the community. Can you hit on that, you know, briefly about, you know, I read something about, you know, you're a survivor. You know, like, can you hit on that?
Absolutely. So, coming up just past, just a couple of days ago, when I'm honest with myself, marked 31 years since the day I answered the door. Prince George's County Police knocked on the door to tell me that my brother had been shot and killed. And that day changed my life forever. I didn't recognize it at that moment, but it absolutely changed who I was. I didn't recognize it at that moment, but it changed my mom. It changed my dad. I mean, it changed our whole family. Years later now, doing the work that I do, and I oversee Everytown Survivor Network, which is a nationwide community of gun violence survivors. So that's my work every day, is I'm dealing with people who are family members or wounded, others who experience gun violence directly, whether it's, have a loved one that was taken, or suicide, or, maybe a workplace shooting, school shootings, they may have been there, working with them to navigate how that is now impacting them. For me, that is personal, because
Right.
I know how that has. I look back now and I say, I know the day that my mom's heart broke. I know it, and I can now see those things and how it just impacted. I can see where she probably didn't connect as well to me because her heart was broken. Very candidly, I was my mom's everything. My mom had an oldest daughter who died as an infant. And then my brother came, and my brother's then killed. I was everything, but my mom's heart was so hurt because she had 2 children that had died. And so it was hard for her to connect. So when you talked earlier and I talked about that, Huck, my mom wasn't that person, because she couldn't make that connection, I think, because her heart was just so hardened. And now I even see my daughter, Bailey, and it's like, Bailey's always looking for the hug. And I had to get through that place where I wasn't so hard in my heart. Because I'd had those disappointments that I couldn't give her that love. So now I'm committed to gun violence prevention. I'm committed to doing the work. I do it every day, working to advocate and change laws and get more access for victims. That's probably my number one priority, is those survivors, right? What are we doing in the community to help them? What are we doing? Because that trauma, that grief, and then the underlying factors in many of the communities I think about, what are we doing to economics? What are we getting better jobs? How are we improving housing? All of those things contribute. So that's what I'm working every day to do, to improve that in communities across the country.
Right. It's amazing your ability to recognize and forgive, recognize the harden of the heart. Is something that I got to recognize in myself. I grew up with, an outlook on my mom that wasn't pleasant.
Yeah.
Because of the stories that I was told. I didn't understand the why, though.
Yeah.
And I think once I was able to piece together the why she was absent, I was able to forgive her. I remember when I came back home, it was around her birthday time, and me and my mom had an event that happened in Hawaii. She ended up departing the residence, not staying for the change of command. And I think we had some dialogue, and it was like, it all came out, right? Yep. And I remember being at Pre's mom's house, and she showed up, and we hugged. Man, I cried. I ain't never boo-hoo so hard,
right.
But it was needed, right? Because I was finally able to, throughout that time, figure out why my mom, and it wasn't necessarily a disdain for me or dislike for me. It was things that she had endured that just hardened her heart. That made it hard for her to be there and hug on me, right? And you were able to kind of recognize that and just appreciate, all that, you endured to be able to give that to your daughter, because you're shaping her. And that's the craziest part about parenthood, is like every day you are building something into somebody else, whether you know it or not, and they're going to remember it, but it's going to affect them later on down the life.
And I think it's also, you mentioned that, and what I'm doing, and my daughters see me. My mom and I had a very strained relationship, and ultimately, my parents divorced, which is a similarity that my wife and I have, and both of us were committed when we got married. Look, this divorce thing is off the table. We gonna figure it out. We are not gonna go down that path. But, my mom and I, always cordial, always respectful, but it was amazing that, in life, I had to become the parent later on. My mom had a stroke, and I had to become the caregiver, and I had to become the advocate. I had to, right? And I'm the only one. I don't have siblings. I am it. My aunt and uncle, they have their own families. My uncle eventually passed. I'm it, right? So I had to be my mom's everything. And looking back in life, I'm like, but I needed you to be my everything. But I also recognize, just like my girls would see, my mom was in a nursing facility, and every Thanksgiving, it didn't matter what we were making, what we were eating. We were going to make sure my mom had the plate of her choice. And I think that was a great example for my girls. They always saw and made sure that, nope, he does this, he's going there, he's taking care of them. And knowing that, we kind of see grandma, we don't know, but we know dad takes care. He does this. He's doctor's appointments, surgeries, whatever it has to be. All that got pushed aside and said, but this is what I'm going to do. And I know, and I'm taking y'all with me, and I'm there, I'm committed. It was tough, but it set that example as a dad and a husband that I know that was important too.
Right. How would you say that experience shaped your overall fatherhood?
I think that what it does, it teaches me that even if you make a mistake, I love you, right? Because I think about it, my girls, and it's like, it doesn't matter. I am this role, and I'm going to fulfill my obligation to you. You can mess up, and I'm still going to love you. I'm going to be there. If I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And they've seen me step up, even when it was tough, and they probably heard me fussing and fighting. Man, I don't feel like doing this. But I got it together, I got dressed, I went out the door, I did it. You know, I'm like, man, I'm trying to go on vacation. Man, hold on, y'all. Just give me a little bit, let me go handle this. I think it's changed, and it hopefully has given my girls a perspective that I am a committed person all the way around.
Right.
If he say he gonna do it, he gonna do it.
So you do a lot in the community. You're also a member of Kappa Alpha Psi?
I am. I'm a member of the fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi, 23 years now. So member now with Upper Marlboro Waldorf Alumni Chapter, past poll mark there, which is equivalent to the president. So I've taken on that task.
Congrats.
Thanks. I've done that now, a couple chapters. So it's been my thing. I also serve on the Police Accountability Board in Prince George's County. That's been my professional area. Started doing kind of officer-involved shootings and police reform a couple decades ago. And so now I continue to do that, just trying to be that voice of the community, providing that kind of oversight, but just also that connection, community building, because I tell that to the community all the time. You know, you're going to call 911. You expect certain things. And so we've got to make sure we find that balance in our community so that we can have public safety, because it's an important aspect of it, but it's got to be done right. And so I definitely work to do that too.
When I look at the community, and you talked about gun violence, I think a lot of it stems from absence of fathers in the household. And so with your organizations, both the frat, both on your own, you know, do you see yourself trying to fill some of those fatherhood or mentorship roles to be able to
definitely in the fraternity. You know, we have mentorship programs, and certainly are trying to supplement that, you know, but I also recognize everybody has a different family dynamic, right? So I try to make sure I'm at least showing up authentically, but in my role, right? And making sure that if I see a young man and I can sense those things about what may be going on, I take that time to address. But when it comes to work, I definitely don't, because the thing I've learned about work is my work is so heavy that I can't carry somebody else's burdens.
Wow.
I've worked with far too many people to carry their stories and their burdens on my shoulder, because if I do that, then I'm gonna take it home.
Right.
And if I take it home, that ain't fair to them. So I have to learn how to compartmentalize that and know that I can address what I can, but I can't fix everything for them. And that was one that I had to learn, to not carry that home.
Right. And so we getting ready to wrap it up here. And I got a feeling I know the answer to this, but we're gonna ask it. It's one of the questions I like to ask is kind of stems from the previous question. Who were your role models or mentors that kind of shaped you early in twofold, as a husband and as a father?
So I think for me, definitely my own dad, in that role as both husband and father, and even watching my parents in their relationship, as a husband, like what, I don't know all the intricacies, but I know positives and negatives that I've seen and experienced.
Right.
When I think about who are those mentors, I think about, I grew up in a cul-de-sac, and there was our home, and next to us was Mr. Rogers, next there was Mr. Turner, there was Mr. Jones, and there's actually a major captain that lived next to us. And so all of those men influenced me.
Right.
All of them in a different way. That cul-de-sac is really what molded me, because I took a little bit, and I took a little bit of what he was doing, and I took a little bit of what he was doing. All of those men I would probably credit with so much. And then later on in life, I had a fraternity brother and a professor, Wendell Andrews, who would always, in the hallways, he would say to me, Mr. James, you're a dangerous man. And I'd be like, stop telling people that, you know. And I had to get to him. I said, what does that mean, Brother Andrews? Why are you telling everybody I'm a dangerous man? He said, because the world ain't ready for what you're about to do. And I was like, well, tell me what I'm about to do. He said, you ain't ready to hear it either. I'm like, damn, it's dangerous. But later on, I understood, you know, what that dangerous man was. Because I had one plan for life. He had convinced me, no, this is your route, and that has really turned out to be what it was for me.
Well, he was definitely spot on because you left a thumbprint and an imprint on my wife and I from just being able to share the space with you at Hell's Kitchen, and here we are, being able to share meaningful dialogue, meaningful experiences that shape. And again, you know, this podcast in new. But it's so needed within that. It's we as Black men, and sometimes just men in general, don't feel like we are able to share experiences. We sometimes think we're the only ones struggling with a said phenomenon or something. And it's like this was the purpose. And so I know for a fact that you're going to be able to reach, even if it's just one, that's one more person that you're going to be able to touch generations to come.
I'm hoping.
So Mr. James, I appreciate you.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. And this ain't going to be the last time that we have you on here. You know, continue to keep your phones away and off the table. Continue to date, continue to love, continue to grow. We wish you nothing but the absolute best. And, you know, one last thing is, how can anyone that would like to get and do some work with you in the community, where can they go?
Absolutely. You know, it's easiest to reach out to me either through Twitter. Keenon225 is my Twitter X handle, if you want to go there. X now, you know. Reaching out through there, or Instagram, and certainly a website that I have, Keenon for Maryland, that continues to be, you know, something that I'm focused on, and even working towards that, ultimately serving my community in a broader capacity. Hoping to do that too. So those are just 3 ways to reach out to me: on X, Instagram, or through the website.
Well, we're definitely going to be promoting you on X and on every other platform, because you are exactly what our youth needs to see. That wraps up this episode of Real Dads, Real Talk. We'll catch you guys on the next episode. Peace.